Hey guys, I am joined today by the lovely Rhys, and he is going to share with us some information about how he feels that the work around men and sexuality and facilitating and how that all fits together. So I'm going to let him introduce himself and share a little bit about who he is and yeah, why sexuality is a topic on his heart for men.
Hello, everybody. I'm Rhys, also known as Paisley Heart. Who am I? What do I do? I consider myself, I guess, as a lifestyle artist. And what I mean by that is making art out of absolutely everything, especially in this social media era. Everything from business, mysticism, relationships, whatever it is, there's a certain art that can be portrayed online through expression and creation and just curiosity, right? And that's how I've been making a living over the last few years. And yeah, sexuality has been a large part of that, and it's came in maybe over the last 3 or 4 years, like strongly. It becomes stronger and stronger. Um, Yeah, and I'm finding it super important, to see the work of people like Vic and a lot of other people in our community to be going out in the world, and especially for men, because I don't see a lot of it. There's a lot of tantric witches out there, but yeah, I don't know about the tantric wizards.
Mm,
I think they're blooming right now, but I think the topics around male sexuality is still a bit more taboo when
mm,
it comes outside of like fucking chicks, like anything more than that might be a bit taboo and risky to talk about on a general basis. So
yeah.
I'm really excited to dive deeper into that with you,
Mm.
Victoria.
Well, that's a great topic. I'm actually curious to why you believe that men's sexuality is more taboo than women's sexuality.
Um, I don't think, like, I personally don't think it is, but I just believe women have started talking about it a whole lot more right now, um, in the rise of feminism, and just because women, like, feminism and being feminine has a larger focus on feelings compared to like men and masculinity. So, men talk about fucking bitches, and counting up on your fingers, there's never, it's like, you never talk about the, like, the beauty that was in it or the emotions or the vulnerability. It's just like, yeah, I fucked her and she loved it, she's moaning the house down. Um, because it's just a bit more societally like a more of a masculine thing. It's the action, it's the doing, it's the pride, it's the achievement, rather than how it felt. So I think as feminism rises and the feminine rises, there's more conversation about the feeling around it and the vulnerability, and how it's been processed and what's needed. Um, and yeah, men are starting to lean a bit more into that feminine energy, but it's just a bit slower and it's a bit more scary because, to have feelings means, you're a bitch, you're gay, you're pussy, whatever it is, these toxic terms.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so that's why I believe it's a bit more taboo, because you've got to be vulnerable, and vulnerable means all these labels that we've been programmed to not be okay with.
Yeah, so it's almost like what I'm hearing is that women are able to be more flexible in their gender role, I guess. So they can be more masculine and they can be more feminine. But for men, it's like it's hard. It's like society is not holding a space for them to be so much in their feminine, and
Mhm.
almost that they're being polarized into just a feminine being if they show up in a feminine way.
Yes, yes.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? And I guess like what I was hearing you was talking about, like, these women that are talking about these great sexual experiences that are super expansive, and then the men are talking about fucking bitches, as you said. And like, where are all the what are these men that are having these amazing experiences? that they're, you know, they're having with these women, are they not free to share about that? Is that what's happening?
You know, I would say, you know, it's funny. I'm definitely 100% generalizing right now, because that is just not what it is in my community. But, you know, here and there I'll hang out with like older friends that may not be as up to speed with, or just as in touch with feminine energy and these deeper experiences in expression. And obviously I get the people on Instagram and Facebook that are like, what the fuck is your problem, when I'm expressing a bit more like with feminine energy. I started to rant, but I've forgotten what the question is.
We were talking about, you know, why, whether men, like you in your community, men don't speak like that and men are open with their sexuality.
Okay, cool. So yeah, for example, I hung out with some older friends recently, and you know, they were just talking about like going out and fucking prostitutes, and like it was at a wedding and they're like picking out which ones were the single ones and like who could fuck them first, and there was no like, oh, you know, she's so beautiful, look at the way her blah does this, or how kind she is when she stares at you, or whatever, you know, I'd love to have a deep experience with her. It's just like the boys are on the hunt, you know, and like who can get the prize, who can get the trophy. um, you know, and there's, it can be viewed as toxic. I enjoyed it, you know, being around it, because I just never see it anymore. So there was a thrill to it. You know, I wasn't participating, but it was entertaining to watch. And yeah, it's just the culture like this there. It's they haven't been introduced to it, and it hasn't been normalized for them, and they haven't gone down that journey. And I think in a collective, you know, like it's hard, you know, when I was really good friends with them and that was my crew, I sort of had to break out a bit more to be able to do that. I couldn't like do it and then like come back and tell them all these weird quotation marks experiences I was having, because it just bring more degrees of separation. And then, but because I've done the path and I do my thing and then come back, and they see it all on my social media and whatnot, and because I've owned it, you know, because it's when it's scary and it's vulnerable going out and doing these things, like I was insecure about it among the boys and whatnot, you know. It's easier because I had a great group of women friends that they would understand, you know. But coming back to the boys, I tried to like unpack some of the stuff that was going on. They'd be like, bro, what's going on with you? You know, like, you're gay now? You seem to be having sex with more women, but somehow you're gayer.
I love that. It's so true as well. And when you were sharing that, what I was hearing was like this experience of like, for me, and what I'm hearing is like it's the ability to have range. You know, like I personally don't think that like there's anything wrong with these men saying like, oh, you know, look how hot she is, I bet she's single, or blah blah blah, that kind of talk. You know, it's just one culture.
Yeah.
But for me, it's about like, how do we tune into that, the range, to be able to go from that space of like, you know, some people might call it objectification, to, you know, also being able to shop and like, wow, she's so beautiful, and just really being with the truth of whatever we're feeling in our hearts, you know. And what I would love to see from men's sexuality is this more. But I think because it is so demonized, men's sexuality in our society, that men aren't able to show from the truth, you know. I think, you know, when somebody hits on me or asks me out or comments on a photo that I don't know very well and says, oh, you're hot, or something like that, you know, I don't have a reaction to that, but I know a lot of women who would have a reaction to that. So for me, it's this whole piece of language, and we've put something in the category of wrong. And whenever that happens, we're just creating this experience of you know, polarizing what we actually want in our lives. So I think like what I would love to see from men's sexuality is just more variety, and to be able to show up in all of it.
Yes.
And you know, I think that you and I, you know, from this community where there are a lot of male tantrikas, and what I'm seeing is the men that do show up in all of it are demonized still. So it's like there is almost this experience of like, how do we create the culture where you know, men are free to be in their sexuality, and men and women are. So I think for me it's about this inner journey of like really claiming that, and just getting further and further through that vulnerability to get to the place where you can own it, like you said. I think that's a really powerful place that you're in right now.
Well, you know, a big part of it is like, you know, someone like myself going out on this journey. And for example, you know, at this wedding that I was at, you know, they get married, blah, blah, blah. And I haven't seen a lot of these people in like 5 years or something like that. Some I see on a very rare occasion, but majority not. So, but they all watch me on Instagram. They don't say anything, but they watch me, you know? And, you know, once a few, like they're, hey, Rhys, hey, going, blah, you know, I see you, you know, inspiring people on Instagram. Good on you, you know. I'm like, thanks. And then, but as the drinks come in and whatnot, they start to loosen up about the topics that I'm going on about. And then eventually, it was amazing. I loved it. It was hilarious. Like at the wedding, I was started sitting near the dance floor as people were partying and whatnot. I wasn't drinking. And like people would come, like sit by me here and there. And it was like I was having, like I had like a counseling booth, you know, like people would come and ask me questions about sexuality and relationships and whatnot. And I'd be like, all right, so this is going on. Don't tell anyone else, but I'm feeling this, rah, rah, rah. And then like the next person, I'm like, they're all like, don't tell anyone else. I'm like, these are all going through the same thing. Like I didn't say that, but in my head. And like, this is a thing I see like in relationships, for instance. Like a lot of men, when they get into like a really deep relationship, they start to disappear from the boys because the women have cracked them open, and they like, fuck, you know, like I'm so vulnerable now and I'm just so attached to her and I get all this feeling. I don't want the boys to see that part of me. And then the last degree of it is me being out on this path is, and like I know people like Tyron, a lot of our client base comes through women suggesting to men to work with us, you know? So I think that's a massive part in healing this journey and making it go faster, is women really spotlighting people like myself or Tyron or Cam Fraser or Danny or whoever, the people that are really embracing their sexuality and quite progressive, is women going like, sharing our stuff and like saying to men, hey, you should work with Paisley, you should work with Tyrone, you should work with Danny, whoever it is. And that's how I get a lot of my male clients. Rarely do men reach out to me on their own. It's always through a woman.
Wow. Yeah, that's really, really interesting, isn't it? I'm just wondering about that and how that actually plays out in the space of men stepping into their own with their own sexuality, you know, like what would happen to the men that are feeling that pull towards you know, working with one of you guys, or like really stepping more into their sexuality. Like where do they even go, or how do they even how could it actually, this is a great question. How do you think a man could start his journey in sexuality of his own accord, like without having the you know, a mentor or anything else? What would you think, what would you say is the best way for him to explore his sexuality?
Like, I think one of the best steps in to create a whole new world of exploration is just whatever his name, Mantuck's Multi-Orgasmic Man, like reading that book, because you can do it in your own space and it has exercises. It's sort of like a workshop book. And once you learn how to be multi-orgasmic and you learn these breathing techniques and how like things about ejaculation, all this, it's open to so much more. And then you start having these experiences with women or men, whoever it is that you prefer, that you all of a sudden have this whole new playing ground. And then you will be like, oh, well, someone else understands that. I've got to reach out to them and talk to them. I think that is definitely a massive step that you can do on your own, reading that book. And another would just be like men's circles. Like, obviously that's not on your own, but going and maybe just playing quite comfortably, you know, just sharing some small things, but seeing if other men bring up some things around sexuality so you feel more comfortable. And that space is specifically a container that's like, there's no shaming, there's full confidentiality, you know, and you get to hear other men's perspective in quite a vulnerable space, you know, and you don't have to share anything if you don't want to, but at least you can hear and go, other men are feeling like this. I think those would be the two steps in that really, really help. Or just like following someone like myself, Tyra, and whoever that like are talking about these things, and you don't have to engage, but just at least going like, oh, you know, this is a consistent thing. Women are commenting on it, men are commenting on it. It seems pretty normal in their world. Maybe I can embrace one of the things they talk about.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think what's there for me when you're sharing is like the conditioning, the layers. You know, one thing that I do experience with um, men who want to do the work of self pleasure. So with my school with working in self pleasure, they might say to me, "Oh, you know, I'm happy to work with women and watch women self pleasure, but I don't feel comfortable to watch men self pleasure."
Mm.
And I really believe like that this is part of what I'm seeing in the exploration. For me, it's nothing to do with their sexuality when you're watching someone self pleasure. And for me, that's often a gauge of like, oh, maybe you're not ready for this work, because like when I'm watching somebody self pleasure, it doesn't matter to me whether they're a man or a woman, because I'm not a part of the sexual experience. I'm actually just witnessing them in their experience of their sexuality. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not about me being part of it. And I believe that there's a lot of layers of conditioning that I've had to release to get to the stage where I can actually see somebody in a sexual experience and not feel that I need to become a part of that, or I need to, you know, that I'm engaged in this experience. So
Mm.
I'm just wondering if, like, you know, what kind of barriers of conditioning you feel like men need to work through, or even yourself need to work through, to sort of be an experience where they can watch somebody in their sexuality without feeling like they're a part of that experience and that they are impacted by that.
I think that's from a lot of men that I know, like even people that are on a similar journey to me. Certain men, just it's really fucking hard for them to step out of that like experience of it not being sexualized, you know. I think like just learning those degrees of stepping back. Maybe one of the best things that really helped me get on that journey was um, taking like sexy pictures of myself for myself to look at and look back at and go like objectively look at it and go, whoa, like I'm so beautiful. I look at my sexual essence, whatever it is, or like, oh, I don't like that angle, whatever it is, but like working on it. And then eventually maybe you can make some erotic filming art, you know, and like you can film yourself and watch it back, man. I find it like so cathartic, and it doesn't have to be like I don't. There's times where I'll self pleasure over myself, you know, but then there's times where I just watch it and I'm like, whoa, this is a beautiful piece of art, you know, and no one else has to see it, whatever. I share my stuff, but like you don't have to, you know, and then it's just finding, you know, different avenues. It's hard to suggest to people because I don't know where they're at, but like, you know, then one of the next steps I had was I have a close group of friends where we were sharing nude pictures of one another, and it didn't have to be sexual. It was just like our body as art, you know, where we are naked. It might just be a nice shot, you know, in nature or with a piece of fruit or whatever, where we're naked. But I didn't have to have a hard cock or, you know, touching myself in certain ways. And it was men and women in there where we could just go, like compliment on the beauty rather than like, this turns me on. It was more like, whoa, like your body is amazing, you know, and to hear it from other people, like, oh, wow, like, then they don't want to have to fuck me because I'm naked or I'm hard or I'm whatever or my cock is out, but they just think my body is beautiful, you know. And just these little steps, it's a big step, but little step as well of like, okay, like being witnessed in my nudity, maybe going to the fucking nudist beach, and maybe the first few times you go, you will get turned on by all the women there, and you may even get turned on by other men there. It doesn't make you gay if you don't want to be, but it's just like other naked bodies. I'm turned on by taboo-ness, like shame can even turn you on, whatever it is. But then you go a few times and you just like jumping in and out of the water and it's normal, you know, and you're not getting turned on, but you can see bodies, but like everyone's bodies is so normal. They're different, but all so the same, you know, and I don't feel sexual desire towards them. I'm just looking at them as if they were clothes, but they seem so much more natural now.
Beautiful. There's so many layers in that, isn't it? It's like the conditioning around naked, seeing people naked. It's like if we are only exposed to porn and that's the only naked people that we're seeing on a daily basis, then we probably will start sexualizing nudity very quickly. The other thing I heard was like creating deep intimacy with yourself. So it's like this knowing like the inner realms of your body as a naked being, knowing the how you view yourself as a sexual being, when you feel your sexual essence, when you don't feel your sexual essence. And I think that's also true as well. Like for me, like it can be very, I can have the experience of watching somebody in their self-pleasure, and I can feel their sexual essence and not make it about me. And one of the ways that I word this to people is like, when we're doing, say if we're doing something like plant medicine, when somebody serves you plant medicine, you're supposed to get out of the way so that they can receive the medicine from you. And with the world of sexuality, what I say is that like, we are actually the medicine. So if we do experience pleasure or enjoyment in watching somebody in their sexual essence, we are still being the medicine. We just choose how we want to act on it. And what one of the things I often share in my public speaking is like, what would it be like if, you know, a lot of people when they're walking down the street, they find somebody of the opposite sex or the same sex attractive, they suddenly think to shut it down. Like their neural pathways are like, don't let anybody know that I'm feeling attracted to that person, that I feel like sexually aroused by that person being around me. And so what we're doing is we're creating like this neural pathway where we're shutting down that energy in the genitals. And so what that actually then occurs in every area of our life, because we're telling ourselves that it's not okay to feel our sexual essence. And what we're also telling our bodies is that we don't trust our own sexual essence. Because it's actually totally possible for me to walk down the street, find somebody attractive, feel very sexually drawn to them, and then just breathe in and breathe out, you know, and keep walking. And like, I don't need to do anything over there. I don't need to act on it. I don't need to feel shame. I don't need to, like, nothing needs to change. But we're never taught that. We're taught that, you know, this sexual energy is so needs to be kept in our world, away from everybody else, and no one can ever know that we feel these ways. And so like when we let go of that, we can actually hold a space to be that medicine. So, you know, if I can allow myself to watch somebody in their self-pleasure practice, if arousal arises in my body, I'm not making it wrong, and I'm also not projecting that onto them or allowing them to have the sense that I'm feeling that. I'm just allowing it to move through my body, breathe in, breathe out, and then it passes, just like every other feeling, just like every other emotion. And I believe this is the you know, it's kind of like emotional agility, sexual agility that we get to create in facilitating somebody in their sexual experience.
100%, 100%. It's such a journey, you know, like maybe with men, like this is just a theory that I have at the moment, like, and been exploring, is it's a bit more vulnerable. This is my perspective, doesn't make it true. Is like it's a bit more vulnerable being a man, being turned on, because our genitals are external, you know, and like being naked, it is external, like it's not internal. So they're more visible, you know. It's like I imagine, like with a woman, if she gets turned on, she'll get wet, and you know, depending on how wet you do get, it maybe won't be as visible compared to a man, you know, like getting an erection, like it's very visible. You know, if you go to a nudist beach, if I get an erection, I'm walking, like it's very vulnerable, you know, like, and like that part of you that has to shut it down. And I used to do that. It used to be wild. Like I used to create the most fuck situations in my head, like these neuropaths that made me shut down my sexuality. I remember when I first started going to nudist beaches, however long ago, 5 years ago, maybe 6. Like if I started to get turned on, I would imagine like some of my favorite people, like around me, like favorite men, like making fun of me. You know, I would, but not as in like I thought they were, but I would intentionally do it to help it get rid of my erection. Because I'd create the scenario on purpose. I was creating that neuropath. It wasn't like a subconscious thing. It was like very conscious, you know. So that I unwired that. But like that's what it was. Like I was like intentionally bullying myself externally by someone else to get rid of my erection, because I didn't want to, you know, pop wood at the beach or whatever if I saw someone or something, or just the wind blew and it happened to be quite erotic, you know, like, so yeah, like I think it's a part of the vulnerability of men and sexuality is the having the external organs of like your cock. And, you know, like when you're so young, you're 13, whatever age it is, where you start really getting boners like all the fucking times, you know, you're taught to tuck it under your belt or like to hide it or whatever. It's like, I've personally been working on being able to just like rock an erection whenever I get it, you know, and walk around. And if someone sees it, then I'm like, they're like, is that your cock? Yeah, it is. I'm turned on at this second. I hope that's okay, you know, because I feel okay about it. And it's not as easy as that, you know. I still get the like hide it, you know, it's not okay, it makes a woman feel unsafe, or like one of the guys are going to judge me, whatever it is. But I just breathe through it.
Amazing. Yeah, I can really feel the vulnerability in that, and there is a vulnerability in feeling our turn on, which I think is really important to speak into as well. I love what you shared though about the ability to just literally be okay with it, and what it's taken, the steps that it takes to get there, and being in, and also it made me think of you know, when men come to me in my practice, they talk about how sometimes they'll like think of grammar so that they don't ejaculate, you know, like that is a very common, you know, thing that is in our society. Make sure you think of grammar so that you don't ejaculate too quickly and have premature ejaculation. Like this is something that men use, and you know, I really understand that, but I also question about the neural pathways, and you know, what I believe is that we're actually using thought and shame and guilt to push this energy down, and what is actually possible is for us to use our breath, like you spoke of Fantak Chia, is like we can actually use our breath to circulate that energy around the body, and we can, and when men learn to cultivate this, they can actually work with their erections, you know, and allow their erection to increase and decrease as they breathe in and breathe out. And I think this is a really important part of male sexuality, and something that, you know, would really reduce sexual shame and taboo in our culture, which would be really amazing in my opinion.
Because I believe, like, you know, because of people doing that, thinking of grandma, using shame and guilt and fear and blah 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 to get rid of their erections, and we get so used to doing that I believe that's where, like, when you get at whatever ages they are, 60, 70, 80, whatever it is, where like just men can't pop wood anymore, they need Viagra. I don't think it's an age thing really. It's just this conditioning and these neuropaths is really becoming concrete strong by that time. It's just like you've just taught yourself not to get an erection anymore.
100%. That's exactly it, isn't it? If you spend your whole life thinking that grandma is not the one to get an erection around, when you become a granddad and a grandma, you're not going to be able to get that erection.
Yeah, because you're dating grandma by that age.
Exactly. Yeah, wow. That's beautiful. I feel like there's so many other wormholes we could go down in that conversation, but I'm feeling to leave it there for today. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for jumping on and having this chat with me. I feel like it's been really eye-opening. So looking forward to sharing it. Thank you.
My absolute pleasure. And yeah, I look forward to hearing about, you know, the men joining this container of yours this time around. And I'm actually like, I clocked halfway through. I don't know if to speak about this on the podcast or not, but like, I was like, oh, this will be so great if you're still doing the like men doing the self-pleasure, and you have men in a container, and men are going to actually witness other men self-pleasuring, or even guiding men into self-pleasure. That's going to be revolutionary, you know, and I will definitely end up to demo again.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, I think that is important to share on this podcast. You know, this container that I'm about to open, for those who don't know, is the Institute of New Paradigm Intimacy. Is a sexuality school training men and women to be sexuality leaders. We've had 2 rounds of women now, and we're about to launch the 3rd one for women, and we're about to launch the 1st one for men. So yeah, it's all about really being able to have the biggest, widest spectrum of understanding around sexuality, so that we can feel deeply comfortable in our bodies and share this transmission with the world. So yeah, if you are interested, and these topics, even if they scare you a little bit, I would love to hear from you, because I think that there's a beauty in opening ourselves and deepening, so that we can, you know, have the level of expression that we want to have around our sexualities in our lives.
And I'd like to just open that as well in the manner of like, if there's things, I highly recommend joining Vic in her work. I think it's really powerful. And if you feel like you want to join, but maybe it's scary to reach out to a woman, and you have some questions that you might need to filter through a man first, feel welcome to ask me about anything that I've said, and then I can direct you back to Victoria.
Perfect. Yes, I'm a very open space. There's not much people haven't said to me, but I can understand the vulnerability. So thank you for sharing that. Perfect. All right, my love. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye.